We'll call to order meeting Public Utilities District number 1 of Skagit County for today. Please join me in the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm going to get it all not.
All right, and we will start by acknowledging the absence of our colleague and Commissioner Lindquist. You've given us a heads up on for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I motion to approve the consent agenda, items 1 through 5.
Second? Motion and a second. Any objections? All right. No, motion approved. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. All right. Let's see if we can lead this to SkagitNet update and discussion. Sarah, welcome.
Thank you, commissioners. Always very nice to see you.
You should.
Been challenged to be quick, so I'm gonna try to keep my lengthy missive a little brief. I'll start with the BEAD process just quickly, so we're all tracking that as it starts to come toward application time, which will happen this fall. I'll give you a quick project update on Fur Island, Bow Edison, Soxhawtla, and then we'll go talk about the IRU service. So BEAD, I have control. You told me that. You have to tell me it. So, we're just getting this technology at the board. Okay, you've seen this before, but this is the BEAD project timeline or the BEAD initiative timeline. It comes from the state's website. So if you're interested in going in deep on the BEAD program, go to Internet for All at the Department of Commerce, Washington State. So we are into the very end of the mapping process. And if you recall, the way this has worked, it kicked off last spring with this huge effort to collect data, define the needs in our community, and then we submitted all of that to the Washington State Broadband Office, who came back with 5 project areas defined in Skagit County. They did that for the rest of the state as well. We're now into a challenge process, which is where anyone who feels that their infrastructure or service has not been represented accurately on those maps can challenge. And then at the beginning of August, that will be kind of the closing of the challenge process. WSBO's kind of gone back and forth with challengers, and they will then come back out with new maps that will be somewhat refined. And then into September timeframe, we'll see the first application opportunities come up. Money will start to flow in Q1 of next year. So these are the project areas, and I apologize for this map. But again, I'd say go to the Internet for All website if you want to get into the interactive version of this. But those are the 5 project areas that the state has defined for us. It's really, most of Skagit County, but it's only specific areas within those larger project polygons. And then you see some kind of odd carve outs there. And those are areas that have already received state funding or federal funding in the form of the RDOF funding. And so they've carved those back out again. So those are the project areas. Quick summary, again, WSBO is leading the process. Based on the initial mapping, Skagit County is supposed to receive about $31 million, and that's based on homes that are unserved currently or underserved. And it's somewhat less than 5,000 homes now. When this estimate was made, it was about 6,500 homes. That's probably still going to come down a little bit more as the maps are refined. State is matching, the State Department of Commerce is matching the federal funding to the tune of 25% for public entities that choose to apply. So if we were to apply for all 31 million, we could bring in another roughly $8 million to the state. that will not happen. And I'll talk about that in just a minute here. Again, applications open up this fall, 25% match required. Any applicant has to also provide a letter of credit from a bank for 25% of any project award. If you're a public applicant, you can go after a performance bond, just like we would do on any large capital project, or actually require of our contractors on a capital project. The cost of that performance bond can be paid with the state matching funds. So that's a surmountable thing from a financial perspective. It will tie up debt capacity for any public entity that chooses to apply. So that's for the duration of the project. That's something that the Port Commission is weighing heavily right now. And then there are some other things. You have to have a plan for workforce development and digital equity. These things are a little bit beyond our ken as a port district and a PUD. So again, we're working through that and figuring out how we can bring that piece to the table. There's a large group. There's a group of 5 counties called Swiss that meet, and broadband is now one of their priorities. And so we're working with Swiss to try to address the digital equity piece of things. So in terms of how and when we apply, do we apply, those big questions, the county in general, going back to those 5 project areas, there's infrastructure in all of these areas. People may not be served, but there's backbone infrastructure in all of these areas. And it may be that it's publicly owned, it may be that it's owned by Astound or Ziply. It's pretty much one of those 3. So we're looking to see what the private sector is likely to do based on where that infrastructure already is. And if it's very likely that one of those other applicants is likely to go in and apply because it makes economic sense for them, we'll stand down. For example, in the easternmost project area 181, those are all RDOF covered areas. RDOF is that reverse auction process where Ziply's already getting some substantial federal subsidies to build, and they've also made a contractual obligation to the federal government that they will build those areas. So it's going to make a lot of sense for Ziply to handle that. We're talking to Ziply. We're also talking to Astound. We will come together and figure out where it makes sense for us to partner and what portion of all of this it makes sense for a public entity to come in and provide those matching funds. That's the only instance in which we would apply. If it makes sense for the private sector to handle it, they'll handle it. If bringing some public funding to the table will change that equation for them, we'll have to think long and hard about whether we want to jump in. And I suspect we may apply for some of this.
So will you just clarify, is this in regard to applying for the match to the BEAD funding or BEAD funding in general? Is it both?
It's BEAD funding in general, which includes the match if we're as a public entity. So it would be both.
And does the BEAD funding require the 25% match, or is that the additional state match that requires 25%?
One and the same. The BEAD funding requires a 25% match. The state will provide that 25% match for us.
Got it.
For public entities.
Got it. So that would be where it makes sense that for a specific area in particular for Ziply or for Astound to partner with us if they needed that additional money to move forward.
Exactly. Everybody that has a stake in this is modeling it, doing their own financial assessment and determining whether or not with the federal funding, they can go forward and make this happen. And there are cases where someone will have to provide 25% match period to be eligible.
Got it.
But there are cases where there's enough revenue potential that the private sector may go forward and provide their own match.
Yeah.
So we'll look for those areas and weed them out. And then in other areas, we again, I think, feel the weight of responsibility as the lead on broadband in the county. And I say that as our SkagitNet partnership, that we want to make sure we're not leaving portions of our community behind where we can step in and bring a solution. The port has handled the capital projects thus far, including all of the grant funding and matching funds and getting the projects done. So I just say that because this partnership is hugely important. We leverage your resources all the time. But hopefully it's not going to be an application decision by the PUD Commission. We will want to keep talking about it. It's partnership and these are big decisions. So that's the BEAD update. Any other questions on that? I don't know how to.
No, it makes more
Yeah.
sense that the 25%, essentially the idea being for the state to provide the match is that it's for locations more so that doesn't make so much sense for the private and to
Yes.
invest into those locations. They partner with us. We provide that 25% through the state to be able to kind of float the project so that they can acquire the BEAD funding to pay for it.
Yes. The state's trying to help us put a thumb on the scale a little bit to make sure that some of these areas get served that just may not be appealing for a private application.
Got it.
Sir?
Yeah.
Are the project areas divided up in terms of try and keep the dollar values equal, the number of customers equal, or is there
It's
any
the home served. Yeah.
home served?
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like a census
Okay.
allocation or a commissioner district allocation. Yeah. Yeah. It's the home served. They're terrible maps. I just apologize, but anyway.
Just they divided them up somehow. So
Yeah, but this is an interactive map. This is a screenshot of an interactive map. So Internet for All, you can find this map and you can play around with it a little bit. And then again, it'll all be edited in the at the close of the challenge process in August.
And those numbers represent the number of projects, not necessarily homes served, right? Like there's going to be multiple projects that are coming off of a main backbone. That's the number.
They're defining 5 project areas. So all of like area 213 will be one.
Okay, that's the
application.
number of that area. That's the name of the area. Okay,
So 5 potential grant awards into Skagit County.
okay,
So if we decide to apply, we have to apply for one of those 5 areas.
got it.
And it is our assumption that we will not apply without a private partner
Yes.
because we are not the provider. So, okay. Our other 2 project areas that we are already funded on and working on, there's actually 3 of them, but Fur Island, Bow outlying areas are both almost through the design process. They're at about 90% design right now, starting the permitting process. Fur Island is really ready to go to bid. The Bow outlying areas, which is around Colony Mountain, needs some archaeological review to be ready to go to bid. So that's probably more likely toward the end of the year. The third is, so those 2 are on the rails. They will be done. The third is the Soxuatl project. We've talked a lot about that. We had funding for it that involved loan funding. We gave that back because of the challenge of having the Snohomish County project connect to that. If you remember, Snohomish County received a lot of money to build a connection from Arlington to Darrington, which really takes the economics out of a project build where you're going to have to take on debt service. So we said thanks, but no thanks. We'll try to solve this in another way. State came back to the table, granted new grant funding for a limited build from Darrington north to the tribe, and also a little bit further to Christian Camp Road to serve the Skagit 911 tower. Project's been a challenge, is what I'll say. 2 big issues. One, we are beholden to the Snohomish County deal to have something to connect our system to. And that project build will not be live for probably a year and a half because of the timing on their end. In the meantime, Skagit 911 has connected with Ziply and had probably a well-meaning, but made a contractual deal with Ziply to serve them. And so Ziply is somewhat wedded to their customer, and they're not so interested in doing a deal where we use public grant funding to make a connection to them that doesn't involve a revenue stream for Ziply, which is understandable. That's their primary revenue source on that system. So Ziply is now telling us, we will build without you. We would rather retain the opportunity to have a customer that will serve this line, that will help support this line, than have it built with grant funding and be left with the recurring costs of operating the system without sufficient revenue. So we are coming together with the funders Thursday and the tribe and talking about this project. And we'll be back with more of an update when we get through this. But my guess is that we will either allow Ziply to build or we'll build to the tribe. And the 911 tower will receive the benefit of either Ziply's construction or our construction, but they're going to have to be a customer for Ziply. And I think that's okay. Our primary objective is to get service, but just wanted to let you know where that's at. Questions on project updates? Okay. IRUs. I believe you have a draft IRU in your packet, indefeasible right to use, the long-term ownership interest equivalent somewhat to a long-term lease or an easement. Those are kind of my best analogies. Used by the telecom industry. There are two IRUs that we're actually negotiating right now with Astound. One of which will require the signature from both the PUD and the Port Commission. The other just needs the Port Commission. The first is this backbone segment that begins on Baby Ridge at our telecom hut and goes to concrete, and it laces together segments of fiber that are owned and constructed by the PUD and pieces that are owned by the Port. The second IRU is to cover the Fur Island and Bow Edison projects. When those are done, it's just a fiber to the premise deal. The much simpler IRU, they're very similar, the terms are similar. There won't be money exchanging hands for the fiber to the premise IRU, except that we are trying to get us down to pay the matching funds for the Fur Island build. The backbone, we're looking to strike a deal with them where they will maintain and serve this backbone for the next 20 years. The price is $1,030,000 that we are negotiating currently. We think we have very close to a deal in principle. There's still some technical details to work out. We understand how important it is to the PUD that you retain the use of this fiber for the length of the lifetime of the asset to serve your SCADA system. That's included in this. There are some things, some fine tuning that needs to happen between our attorneys to give everybody the assurance that they need that this will work, or that we can come back to the table and talk about it. Because we're really talking about a 40-year period of time. There's a 20-year IRU that then reverts to another 20-year IRU where we switch roles. And Astound acquires ownership of the backbone system after year 20 and then grants us an IRU to use those limited buffer tubes for another 20 years, which is probably about the life of the infrastructure. I think Astound is feeling like they can't see around the corner. It's too far down the road. And they're a little bit worried about whether or not, they will have a viable business that far down the road. In the telecom industry, that's about 5 lifetimes. So those are things I think we can fine tune the language, but we're still working on that. So we'll bring it back to you. We were hoping to have a joint meeting on August 13th. I think we're going to defer that for a little bit. And we'll come back to you and get a date, but make sure we've got a really finalized deal that both commissions have seen before we put it in front of you for approval. So that's where we are with the IRUs.
I just have a quick question as far as where that 1.1 whatever million goes. Is there any way to have a cost breakdown, kind of our historical expenditures for those pieces of the backbone?
Yeah.
Just to see what the breakdown is. I mean, obviously assets has depreciation over time, but just I think that would not be difficult to do. Yeah. I think we have it in the back of the envelope right now. So yeah, we can do that. Yeah. And I think the conversation we're having right now is that number was derived from just a negotiation about the cost of maintaining the build and kind of the industry value of the build. But from the port's perspective, we have about $750,000 in debt service on the East County line that we're focused on. We also understand there's a really significant piece of the backbone that you all built at a cost. So we'd be looking for cost recovery for you too. So, but I think a breakdown is very doable and probably a nice place to start. So, thank you.
We built the segment on Josh Wilson Road, I think in 2012, 2013. So yeah, we have the bid tab that shows what we spent on all of the fiber infrastructure. So
much of the East County system beyond that and off of port property has been paid for with grant funding, but there's a lot of nuance to that, just matching funds and things like that. Yeah. Okay.
Great. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you,
Sarah.
Yes, sir.
All right, next up, second quarter financials.
All right, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
This is the second quarter financials. So as of June 30th.
Aimed at the computer.
There we go. All right. At the end of June, we had just under $32 million in total district funds. You can see the breakdown there. Just under 22 million is general revenue, 6.3 is system development. We have had some additional new services this year, so that continues to climb. And then debt service, we have 3.7 million. And then on July 1st, sorry, the next day, 1.1 million of that went to debt service. And then we have another big payment as of October. So we accrue that money into that account just until the debt service payments during the year. We invest about 29 of that million is invested with the state local government investment program. We use the 2-year treasury as the benchmark. It's the closest in duration. So this is the Fed rate, 2-year treasury. And then this is the state investment returns. And you see the difference. This is a 2-year treasury and they can only invest less than a year. So they are always lagging behind. So as the rate jumps up, the interest rate the state gets lags behind. And then as rates come down, they still have some invested. And so we're right here in this long period where the Fed hasn't lowered rates. They're talking about out here in September now, lowering rates. But we earned 5.4% in June, the last month, and it's about $150,000 currently a month that we get on our investment for that 29 million that we have. Consumption comparison. This graph shows for the last 4 years by month. And if you recall, at the first quarter report, I had said that the first 3 months of the year, well, these 2 months in particular, we were about 9% ahead in consumption compared to last year. But you'll see a drastic change April, May, and June. We've been significantly lower. Mostly of that is based on the weather and just consumption needs, irrigation, household needs, you'll see. So right now, after 6 months, we're 6.6% less than last year. So quite a significant difference. I did say Fidalgo hadn't made a difference here, but Fidalgo is also part of that. So that's 700 customers that we don't have any longer. But I think we'll balance out here the rest of the year, especially in July with consumption. The revenue comparison, same trend. First 3 months of the year, we were doing all right the first quarter. The second 3 months of the year, we've slowed down, but not as much as consumption because of the rate increase. So we're trending close to budget. In dollars, we've received $15 million in water revenues for 6 months. We're 1% ahead of last year, but right on budget, 15 million. But you can see a little bit of the breakdown here. Residential is flat and we're trending just below budget, but commercial, government, agricultural is an increase. And then resale, which is pretty small dollar amount, is up 8%. So overall, we're trending pretty well. I think most of it is a little bit of Fidalgo and weather. But now with the dry weather, we should get back to what we're anticipating. On the operating expenses, $8.7 million for 6 months. Across the board, salaries, 11% increase, which is a little bit high. We are still below budget. So overall to the forecast, we're okay. I think this has to do with projects. We don't internal projects or non-developer or outside projects we can't capitalize. So this can trend up and down a little bit to the year. And then at the water treatment plant, 10% increase. This is almost all for power. We pumped a lot of water to get ready for the summer. We also didn't have a transformer, so we ran pumps for a lot of the spring to get the Judy Reservoir up. And then the next 3 categories, all 3 of these categories are quite a bit above last year. There's only one that's over budget for the time of year, but I think this will come in under budget on the others. But we anticipated quite a bit of this, and they're all project related. So repairs and maintenance and fleet, if we acquire a big vehicle, this can go up and down and change quite a bit from month to month. Same with tech and SCADA projects. and professional services. A lot of this is tied together. So we have consultants and install and purchase equipment, software, and also security devices. So we'll continue to watch that, but this should come back in line with the budget. Goods and services were down 9% for the first 6 months. Probably again, timing. We bought a lot of inventory. We're still buying regs. They're hopefully we'll see if they maintain the schedule, but we've been getting 1,000 a month now. So we'll continue to be buying goods and services for inventory and projects. Utility taxes is flat for the year. And then construction in progress. This is a good trend. These are costs that we allocate to projects and capitalize or to developers, admin overhead. So that's up 29%, and it's based on the amount of construction that we're doing for the year. So the next slides in a little bit, we'll talk about capital construction program. This slide is just to show you the change in the number of meters since January. So slightly different. But we are seeing a little bit of development. This is up from last year, but it's certainly below prior years. But we have about 48 new residential, 13 commercial, 3 multifamily. And some of these are changes. So I think this farm change, we didn't get 9 new farms, but it's farms or ag that qualify for our new ag rate. And also maybe if they've met the backflow device program, they might qualify now for the farm and ag rate. Capital contributions, $1.3 million so far. It's made up of 4 big categories: work orders done for others, donated plant or developer projects that are then turned over to the PUD to own and operate and maintain. System development fees are those initial hookups for new services, new water meters, and they're buying into the historical cost and value of the water PUD system. And then service orders that we do for others. And you can kind of see we're above budget. We budgeted about $1 million for the first 6 months, and we're at 1.33. It is down 17% from last year, but it's mainly in this category right here, which is donated plants. So we had one big developer project or a few big developer projects that can change drastically. But overall, all the other categories were actually a little bit ahead of last year. So trending pretty well for the budget. And if these are reserved for future expansion or enhancements to the system project. So that's that one fund that we reserve those for. But the other money shows up either in plant capital or in revenue dollars. So that adds to our coffers. Overall summary, so the water sales was 15 million. So we have another $2.2 million. So interest, other things besides water sales go into that $2 million that we've made. Service orders, work orders from the prior slide. Operating expenses are up, but in line with the budgeted amount. But here's a big number, $13.6 billion for 6 months of capital construction, up substantially from there. And that helps our overhead and admin costs that I showed prior. Debt service, we're on track half the year, almost half our debt service, about $4.8 million per year in debt service that we have. So we're spending our reserves. That's the deficit spending. So you see significant decrease in reserves down to about $32 million. So this is per the plan. This is how we did the CIP, the 4 years, the initial 4 years of that. We're in the 5th year. Everything's on track, and that'll continue to go down as we work our way through the rest of this year and into next year's capital program. These are some of the big projects by category that we've done in the first 6 months. You'll see $700,000 of developer projects, so that's a lot. The next category is the IT capital tech projects. These 3 things are ongoing. Security upgrades, that's about what we budget per year, 150. And Alistair tries to upgrade 1 or 2 sites per each year. We're buying servers for the new building and to replace our old servers. And then we're undergoing a big Kayenta, our ERP, our main financial system and work order system We're in the middle of an upgrade, which happens this weekend. So we'll be anxious to come into work on Monday. Yeah. Coordinated projects or other agency projects, a lot of fish passage projects, but also it could be other municipalities. But so far this year, we spent about over $900,000 on creek crossings and pipeline relocation, ongoing projects at the water treatment plants. Those are the expenditures. The SRD transformer replacement, that's just what we spent this year. So that's not total project cost. So I'm showing you what we spent in 2024. And also the disinfection study up there is a big project. Pipe and major projects, all of these are ongoing. And the other one that we've done is campus replacement. So that's a lot of the 13 million. And then the micro hydro, we also have kicked off that one with a large payment to them for the securing of the equipment and procurement, which I'm probably going into the engineering report. So I'll stop there. And that's the last slide. So any questions on the first 6 months?
Nope.
Everything's on track.
All right.
Good.
Keep it that
I
way.
like that.
You could have just said that.
Okay.
No, I appreciate the detail.
All right, now we've got audience comments. If you're online, you please use the raise your hand function. See no one in the room. All right. Move on to manager's report. George.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon, commissioners. Good afternoon, everyone. Guess I'll first start off by acknowledging that I missed the last couple of meetings. So thanks to Kevin for sitting in and keeping things afloat. I'm sure I wasn't missed at all. So update you on a few things. Mark's going to talk about the irrigation and the river levels and all that. So I'll leave that for him. Brian mentioned fish passage and culvert projects. So I have an update for you on that. So in the 2024 capital budget, we received another $300,000 for a specific project. There was also another line item in the state capital budget for cost impacts related to utility relocations. And this was a line item for $1 million that Waputa was pushing the state to try and fund. So a line item actually ended up in the capital budget, $1 million. And there's 8 different PUDs identified as having utility relocation expenses. We're one of the 8. So it comes from the Department of Commerce. So Waputa is talking to them about the criteria to be eligible for some of this funding. The only thing that's in there right now is that the funds can't be obligated or expended before January 1st of 2025. So it's not meant to reimburse what we've already done. They always look forward, right? Brian knows this with a lot of the state funding. They always set it up and then say, okay, now you can be eligible for this. So it's for a future project. They're trying to get clarification on a lot of that. The 8 PUDs, we all sat in on a meeting last week and we talked about this line item and how we would spend the money. So initially we just all said, well, we'll split it evenly, just everybody gets a share. But it's going to be dependent on the criteria of the project. Some PUDs might only have 1 or 2 projects that they're doing this year, and they may not have another project next year. So once we know more of the language, it might weed out a few of the PUDs. As long as we still have projects that we have to do, we might be eligible for even more than 1/8 of the $1 million. So more to come as we learn about some of the language, but it's just a good faith gesture from the legislature to put in $1 million. Obviously, that doesn't cover anywhere near what the costs are, especially for 8 different PUDs, but it's something. Also, another thing that got brought up, and Mark and Brian know this as well as anybody, if you're going to get money, it's got to be enough to make it worth it to jump through all the hoops and do all the things that they need you to do. So it's not worth it for 50 grand. It's got to be a reasonable amount. So that'll all fall out once we figure out more of the details. But Brian was shaking his head when I mentioned this, so he doesn't want any more money. I don't know. Free money is always good, but it's got to be worth our time and investment. The good thing is we've got funding, a number of funding awards in recent years, so we know what to expect, which then can make our decision easier whether it's worth it to take the money or not. So we'll see. What else is going on? So work managers and supervisors are currently working on performance evaluations. We use June 30th as the end of our annual evaluation cycle so that when we do the evaluations, decide on merit raises, it can all be rolled into the budget so that it takes place January 1st. So a lot of people are busy doing that. Speaking of budget, Brian just put out a schedule for us to start looking at it. So as an internal management group, we talk about that, and we're going to start doing that in August. We've got a number of positions that are open right now that we're interviewing and accepting applications for. So I'll just run through them. So the water treatment plant operator. So that's an additional position that we funded 2 months ago. Interviews took place last week and this week, and so we should have an idea on moving forward for that soon. The yard and maintenance position was made into a permanent position, I think, at the last meeting, so that's open. I think that's closing soon. We've got a lot of applicants for that one. I think Krista said over 60. So wow. Got quite a few. We have a couple of retirements that we're needing to replace, or a water quality technician or sampling technician. So that is a position that's open internal right now. We'll go through the internal process because it's a bargaining unit position. And then if we need to, we'll go external. So that's a third one. And then the fourth one is our customer service supervisor, Sharon. She's retiring in September. So we're getting ahead of that one a little bit to try and find somebody. Again, it's an internal posting right now. So if you look at our bulletin board there in the main lobby, you'll see a number of job postings. So it's a good thing. And then we do have some more upcoming that we're going to be doing as well, but we're just not ready to post for those yet. And then last but not least, I was talking to Christian Miller about this earlier. So the water workshop is scheduled for the end of September, the 25th to the 27th. He mentioned that he's going to be attending. Are you planning to attend, Commissioner Hamburg? Do you know yet?
I don't know yet. I have another PNCWA one in Boise earlier that month. So I'm just going to have to.
So you're not sure?
Not sure yet.
It starts on a Wednesday, and we have a meeting scheduled for September 24th on the Tuesday. So it just disrupts travel for some people. So we're just trying to figure out whether we're even going to have a quorum on the board. I need to talk to Commissioner Lindquist, because if he's planning to attend, then I think we will end up just having to cancel the meeting. But so as soon as you know something, can you let me know? And then I'll talk to Joe as well. Perfect. That's all that I have for my update.
All right. Thank you.
Do you have any questions?
Nope. All right.
Thanks.
Engineering.
All right. All right. Things are good. Is that what Brian was supposed to say? Things are good, and then we're
On track.
on track. We're on track. So I'd like to demonstrate that. Let's see. Last update we had was April 9th of 2024. So just want to give you some am I going the wrong direction? There we go. Updates on projects. I think our projects that were under construction were just lifting off around April 4th, or April 9th. West Mount Vernon pipe replacement project is now complete. There's a couple of small items that need to be cleaned up, like just some little yard stuff that was left behind in yards. And then we're going to, start the closeout process, do final change order, final payment, et cetera, and get that one accepted and closed out. The Eagle Drive project has had its challenges with the services. The second part of the project didn't have as many challenges. It's gone a little bit longer, but All the pipe is now in the ground. They are paving, they've probably got 30% of it paved already. Then they're going to do the tie-ins. They've done probably 50% of the tie-ins. And then next week, they're going to start doing services and completing the remainder of the pavement. So we should be out of there in the next 2 to 3 weeks on the Eagle Drive project. And on this one in particular, it's kind of interesting. Chris Schaff did a little bit more public outreach than we normally would because of, the conditions that were out there, the delays that were happening. So he sent out additional letters, and he actually got a letter back from one of the residents stating that, they thanked Chris for his correspondence. They told them that it was good to have the information and that they understand that this is why this is taking longer and that they're looking forward to it being done. So good letter and constructive criticism, I guess. Administration building, we took the tour. Everything's on schedule there. The contractor has projected the end of August for their completion. They are working on cabinetry, setting the mobile shelving, getting the elevator completed, finishing doors and storefronts, et cetera. So there's a lot of finished work that's happening right now. And then along these lines, Alistair has volunteered to be the move coordinator. So he's going around and telling people to jam their stuff into a banker's box. Banker's boxes are the only thing that's going to get moved. So, and we've been working on where the files are going to be stored, how much room we have, and we think that we're going to be able to make it. Let's see. So we've been working with the crews on giving them some capital projects as well. And so we design those and turn them over to Tyler and the gang and Mike Fox, and they work on them. So today they started the John Liner intersection relocations. This is for a roundabout that's going to be on the intersection of John Liner and McGargle. Their work started today. They've also completed the Riverview Lane project this year and the Burlington East-West Connector. And then next year we have some other projects that are slated for them and anything else that might pop up. So this has been a pretty successful, I guess, restart of the crews installing pipes. At least I feel that way. Fish Passage. The SR9 and SR20, well, SR9 is complete and online. SR20, they're expecting to do the tie-ins this week. They're having a little bit of a challenge due to the location and the timing, and there's a number of people who are impacted up there. We may look at doing a nighttime tie-in to keep the impact to the restaurants down. The road is closed now because of the fires, which really helps cut down on traffic. So that's good for us. The Henson Road relocation, we are at 90% complete on that design. This is on the west side of the freeway, south of Blackburn, on Martha Washington Creek. The Cedardale project, or the Cedardale Road project, we're working on that one as well and have completed some easement agreements so that we can continue with our design on that. So the only project that we have left on our pipe replacement program for this year is the Burlington pipe replacement. We want to get that we want to get that installed and closed out before the end of the year. That's what we budgeted for. That's our objective. We have the 100% plans that I need to review before we go out to bid. We expect to put that out to bid this August. The College Way project, part of it is on our budget for this year, and we expect to finish in 2025. That one is 60% design, so we're really in good shape. And as far as 2025 goes, I think we're pretty far. We're a long way into that program. Alta Vista has a completed design. East Division We have begun a design, and East Victoria is nearly complete for design. That would also be a crew project, the East Victoria project. The agency-driven projects, we had some news come out this week that the county doesn't expect to do the Francis Road projects, either 1 or 3, for 2 years. So we're going to kind of pull that back off of our list until 2026 or 2027 and see where it shakes out. Let's see, water treatment plant project. So there's a number of things that we're helping out with at the water treatment plant. The backup generator project is really still at 30% design, which is on schedule. And we're seeking some grant funding with Jay. Has been looking at some sources for funding that project, and George. The water treatment plant, let's see, that would be the W1 pump system, is at a 90% design, and that will be going for bidding this year yet. These next two, the disinfection system replacement study and the North Cedar Woolley tank project are really coming together at a good time with our water system plan. And they really, Bart did his presentation to the commission. He also gave that presentation to staff. And it's just really revealing how the three of those projects are going to kind of evolve and really change how we're doing our capital plan, rather than focusing on capacity improvements, production improvements at the plant to meet our peak hour, versus putting storage out in our systems so we can keep plant production at an even keel, potentially reducing some of the sizes of the transmission line and their capacity improvements, reducing the need to make improvements to the river crossing or those transmission lines into Cedar Woolley. And we should see benefit to the overall budget by placing a very large storage tank in the North Cedar Woolley area. So, I mean, conceptually, we're talking about reducing some of the capital improvements to the plant and to the transmission lines, reducing those and increasing some costs that will go along with a larger storage tank in Cedar Woolley. Overall, it will be a benefit to the budget and the system, and make it run better. The water treatment plant, the flock basin study that we were looking at, we've been monitoring the flock basins over the past 1.5 years, and really they're oscillating. When this first came online, we saw this movement. Well, now they've moved back, and then they've moved forward a little bit and back a little bit. And they're just kind of going back and forth. And we don't know if it's temperature, water, what it is. We spoke to structural consultants, geotechnical consultants. They told us not to worry, just to keep monitoring it. That's what we're going to do until there's a distinct trend that it's going in one direction or another. Let's see, miscellaneous projects, and I say that, but these are so the today we held a pre-bid meeting for the fiber optic line that's going to be underneath Riverside Drive between Alder and the Culshan Trail. So it goes kind of near the restore there. That's a good project. It's one part of the whole program that will get us from the campus here to the water treatment plant. There's more to do, but it's a good first step in a heavily permitted element. This is a picture of the pumps out on the irrigation districts. So that program's been going pretty well. I mean, just having the advanced work that we did to get the program in place has really paid off. I think overall, though we are looking forward to getting our own meters in there and our own telemetry so that we can get the same type of data and consistently with each of there's just little differences in each of the irrigators, the way each of the irrigators is reporting based on their use of the software, but how they use it. So it will be nice to get our meters in there on the next go, but this has been very successful. Did you want to add anything to that, George? I think
I was just going to mention, the rivers dropped. So they are eligible to use our water right now.
Yeah, it fell at the end of last week is when it's come down. So we're in, and it's probably more. It probably stayed above the in-stream flow rule longer than any of us really thought it would for this year. So that's really great. The micro hydro project, yes, we did. We purchased this and we've been going through the design for the layout of the site. The electrical vehicle charging stations will be over here, and we have submitted a quarterly update to Department of Health that project is moving along. Service line inventory. So this is the last thing on my list. We have engaged a consultant, Hazen and Sawyer, to help us get through the regulatory part of our service line inventory. Court and his team have been doing a great job going through our records and finding, assessing the risk of our service lines on the public's, on our side and the private side. They've gone back and looked at individual as-builts, and it's kind of interesting because in 1959 they start to see a note on our plans where we have done pipe replacements that say, if you find galvanized or a lead service line, replace it. So that's really good. That's great for our system and gives us greater confidence that we're not going to have those materials, either galvanized or the lead, in our system. And then it further increases our confidence on the services that we won't test. So when this is done, there's going to be service lines that we know the material of. Those get set aside. The ones we don't know, don't have really exact records on, those we will apply the statistical model to so that we can get to a 95% confidence interval. So based on that, there's both the public side and the private side. On the public side, which is what we own, there are an estimated 17,000 that we know the material and 11,000 that we don't know the material. We also have to inventory the private side. On those, there are about 10,750 that we think are non-lead and about 7,250 that are unknown. So there's a far greater unknown element on the private side. But we expect to, we had a meeting with the Department of Health. They looked at our plan for putting this together, our webpage and notices and everything, and they are on board with our approach. So that's great, and we expect to make the October deadline. That is all I had for my presentation. I don't know if you have questions. I don't. All right. Well, thank you.
Good job.
Thank you.
All right, let's talk about the draft water system plan.
Okay, so tonight we're moving ourselves along in this process of getting this water system plan reviewed and approved. And tonight we are opening it up for discussions with the commission after you've had some review. So Mark always likes us to start off with the mission, vision, and value statements. So our mission is to provide our customers with high quality water services at an affordable price. And our vision is to be an outstanding regional leader and innovative utility provider. And our core values are quality, environmental stewardship, and financial prudence. So what is the purpose of the water system plan? And you'll find that some of the things regarding the purchase also kind of parallel with our mission, vision, and values. So the principal goal of the water system plan is to identify current demands and future needs and apply available resources most efficiently to providing high quality service at the lowest cost while protecting the community's health. What we found is that planning is the cornerstone to understanding the water system capacity. And the water system has water systems with strong technical, managerial, and financial capabilities are well positioned to provide efficient and effective service into the future. So this is just kind of a review of where we come from and where we're going. So back on the 28th of May at the commission meeting, we presented our key findings from our development of the water system plan and provided the commissioners with draft copies of that water system plan. And so for the past 2 months, you've had an opportunity to be reviewing that. On the 25th or June 25th, we had a public hearing, a public forum on water use efficiency goal setting. And so that was one of the elements that we had to do in order to move forward with the approval of the water system plan. And so now it brings us to tonight on the 23rd. So this is our opportunity to listen to any concerns or questions that you might have with regards to the water system plan. Following tonight, we would like basically permission to prepare the draft plan for distribution to public entities, specifically the cities, the county, tribes, in order to get them started on their concurrency reviews and comments. That could take a couple months, so we're planning to start that in August. Also, we'll be preparing plans and submitting them to the Department of Health and the Department of Ecology so that they could start the reviews. Ecology has 60 days once they receive the plans to make comments on their concurrency with our water rights. And so we expect to receive those comments back on the concurrencies from the different entities sometime in October. And that leaves us in November preparing a kind of a final document that we'd submit to Department of Health for their final review, comments, corrections, addendums, things like that to get through the final approval process, possibly by the end of the year. So that's where we're at from a timeline standpoint. Again, you've seen this slide before. There's many programs that are covered in the water system plan. It's very comprehensive. A lot of people committed time and energy to their specific area of expertise. So some of these, this is just a list of some of the programs, major programs and the people responsible for preparing the text that went into the water system plan. And many of those are here tonight. So if you have any specific questions, you can ask them directly. So anyway, with that, we'll leave it to the commission to ask any questions that you might have, make comments about the plan.
I'm sorry. Before you don't feel like this is your last time to make changes on the plan, obviously. So we're going to take edits if any comments come back from the city, plus any additional comments that you have before we submit to DOH can be incorporated. So this is not the end of the review or editing process.
I appreciate that because I think my biggest comment is that we don't get to speak as a commission. To have one of us not here to have this discussion is not, for me, it's not good timing. I would appreciate us being able to have that final discussion. I looked over it very in depthly, and I appreciate all the work that went into it. My biggest comments were more capital improvement plan focused. There was some pipeline extension project that used to be a focus with Department of Ecology partnerships and the previous board's priorities that I don't align with personally, and see as more so a vision for us, our focus to be pipeline replacement and infrastructure maintenance and upgrading. And then also another tank project that I had a lot of questions, the Maltborn tank, questions and concerns regarding that as well. Everything else looked great. And I know how much data collection and time goes into these things. And so I really appreciate that we're able to do this in-house and we have the expertise to do so.
Yeah, and frankly, I think based on the information that we've kind of recently gathered over the last couple of months with the disinfection study information, the analysis that we've done on the North Burlington tank, and just the water system plan in general, I think we're going to have some revisions to this capital plan that will take place through, this and future budgets. I think we need to maybe have a little bit more of a, I don't know if it's an executive summary. We have an executive summary that kind of focus on the shift toward storage and, what we're doing at the water treatment plant and our flows. So I think, the budgets are going to bear that out too.
Yeah, that was my thought on that was that those are the touch points between the strategic plan and then the CIP. So I guess that was a kind of more this is a huge part of that, but to Ben's point that those are great touch points. The last thing I want to do is have someone, and this is the upside of having so many fantastic engineers involved in this, is just to make sure that there are alignment within those, because there are people who say, well, you said the one thing in the one CIP and then it showed up here and it was different and you guys need to get your stuff together. We have our stuff together, and that's the beautiful part of it. I spent some time with that, and I was like looking for the hard choices that we hadn't discussed before. And I didn't have any surprises. So that's a testament to these conversations and keeping us informed. And again, having had a couple of years more of those conversations than Commissioner Hamburg. So that was probably the thing that I kept looking for. One, surprises, didn't find anybody, and then hard decisions that weren't aligned with the strategic plan and CIP, and it was all there. And so I have confidence in moving this forward to the other stakeholders who would be impacted with them. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that. So pending your concern, are you good with
Minus the
releasing it
pipeline
to the-
extension project.
just to release for comment to our partners? So that's the action before.
Yeah.
Is just to open this, even though we're going to continue having, there's no stamp going on right now. What we're saying is it's shaped enough that we want to share it with our external stakeholders.
So if we do make any changes to the capital improvement section, will that have to be re-released and will that delay the timeline, or is that?
No, Bill would probably know more about this, but I think it's a non-significant revision to the SEPA and we're done. We don't need to, and what we've done in the past is where we've made these changes, even though we don't need to, we've communicated with our municipal partners and stakeholders and just said, hey, we made these changes and it's, part of the SEPA. It's a non-significant amendment to the document, and there's no impact.
Yeah, it's not going to affect the concurrency activity from the municipalities at all. And the SEPA, even worst case, you issue an addendum to the SEPA. And it goes back out to the stakeholders. Yeah.
Sounds good to me.
Well, then I would look.
Yeah, there's a motion in there, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I guess I would look for a motion to approve the draft water system plan to release authorization for comment to our partners or whatever it reads.
So motioned.
Motion, and we don't need a second because it's just me. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And carries. All right. Thank you. Let's see, here's some Judy Reservoir, great stuff in there. And as always, people are saying good things about us in the news. Thank you, Kevin. And commissioner comments.
I just had one question on I was reading the article and it said after 4 years, something about 4 years of the membrane, then the membranes were replaced. That seemed kind of like a misnomer. That they were in service for longer than 4 years before they were replaced. Am I wrong?
No,
Okay,
It's the entire skid is gonna be replaced. And the membranes that are in there have been there.
for a long time.
They got replaced, yeah, probably 9 years ago.
Yeah. Okay, I just read that. I'm like, 4 years seems like a really short amount of time. I don't think that's accurate. Okay.
Excellent. And then our next scheduled meeting is the 13th. I may have some scheduling conflicts with that. George, do you know if we have pressing issues before the board or?
We were going to have the joint meeting with
Right.
the port on that day, but as Sarah explained, there's more edits to go through with the IRU, so that's kicked down the road. So as of now, there's just a department update on our draft agenda. So I'll continue talking with you. There's an option of not having that meeting if there's just nothing on the agenda. So I'll keep in contact with all of you
All right.
regarding that.
Awesome. All right. Well, nothing else. We will adjourn at 5:36.